Tatskalawat, good evening, everybody. My name is Beth Piatot. I'm the director of the Arts Research Center. It is so beautiful to be in this room with this warm, happy crowd of family and friends. And it is such a joy to be able to announce this great program tonight, Poetry the Mythic Imagination. Readings by Jennifer Reimer and Aimee Suzara in conversation with Erika Higbee. This is an incredible lineup of poets and thinkers and just brilliant artists to spend time with. I just have a couple of announcements. First of all, please turn off your phones or silence them so you can take pictures. Please silence your phones at any rate. I have some words of gratitude to our sponsors. So our program tonight is presented by the Arts Research Center, but we have support from the Dean's Office of the Divisional Arts and Humanities. And this program is also co-sponsored by the Department of English, Asian American Research Center, and the Center for Race and Gender. So we thank all of our co-sponsors, and again, we thank everybody who's joined us here tonight. I also want to announce that the Arts Research Center this year is celebrating our 25th anniversary. Yes, 25 years of centering art on campus. And so we've made a bingo card, conveniently, 25 events. So please pick one of these up and check out all our events for the whole year. We also have some swag on the table as you came in. We have these cool buttons. We have DIY bookmarks. I think I've already announced. You could very shortly have a book or two to actually check the functionality of your bookmark if you choose to make one tonight. Also, part of our celebration of this year and celebrating the power of arts in our lives is we're really centering joy and creativity as sustaining aspects of arts. And so we are giving stuff away at every event. And tonight our giveaways will be a set of the books, 2 lucky winners. We will announce them at the end. So for now, am I skipping any? Okay, then I'm going to do the last thing that I'm required to do before I sit down and just enjoy everything to unfold. I'm going to introduce Erika Higbee. And I do want to say that it has been my great fortune to know both Jen Reimer and Aimee Suzara personally, but also as artists, and Erika as well. And so the three of them is just a dream combination. I think all of you will be on board, if you're not already, to have these 3 amazing writers together. So Erika will come up and do the introductions and facilitate the conversation after the readings. Okay. Erika Higbee is a Ph.D. student in English and a Mellon-Chancellor Fellow at UC Berkeley. She is a first-generation college student, child of immigrants, Vietnamese-American, and Chicanx woman from Garden Grove, California. Their dissertation examines contemporary documentary poetry written by diasporic Asian American poets such as Teresa Ha Kyung Cha and Mai Der Vong, in order to show how poetry can operate as both a historiographic practice and healing ritual for those found in the aftermath of imperial war and occupation. She's interested in documentary poetry and poetics, women of color documentarians, the archive, historiography, feminist methods of critique, minority aesthetics, diasporic cultural production, and poetry as a spell and ritual. Their creative work can be found on Diasporic Vietnamese Artist Network, DVAN. She teaches courses on feminism and history, anti-colonial feminist poetry, and mothers and daughters in Asian American literature. She loves kumquats, orchids, and the moon. Welcome, Erika Higbee.
Thank you, Beth, for that introduction. And I'm really happy to be here with Jennifer and Aimee, and very excited for their reading, and happy that we're all here with Beth. And thank you, Lori and Lily, for your organizational skills in this event. I will start with the official introductions. and then go into a more intimate encounter with their poetry afterward. So Jennifer A. Reimer, Assistant Professor of American Studies at Oregon State University, received her Ph.D. in Ethnic Studies here at University of California, Berkeley, and her MFA in Writing from the University of San Francisco. She is the 2011 winner of the American Studies Association's Gloria E. Anzaldúa Award. Jennifer's scholarly work has appeared in Western American Literature, ARIEL, the Journal of Popular Music Studies, Latino Studies, the Journal of Transnational American Studies, and quite a few more. Her current research interests include comparative immigrant aesthetics, collaboration as transnational feminist praxis, and the poetics of difference. Her work also appears in the Routledge Companion to Transnational American Studies. She is co-editor of the Forms of Migration book series and the author of 2 books of poetry, the Rainy Season Diaries and Keşke, who is pictured here. The Turkish translation of the Rainy Season Diaries was released in 2017. She is forward editor of the Journal of Transnational American Studies. She lives in Salem, Oregon, with Gonzalo Belmonte and Daisy in Dreams of the Mediterranean. Aimee Suzara is a Filipino-American poet, playwright, and interdisciplinary performer based in Oakland, California. Her book, Souvenir, was a Willa Award finalist. Poems and prose appear in publications such as Kartika Review, Lantern Review, Orion Magazine, Raising Mothers, and Pop Sugar. She has been invited to universities, conferences, and festivals such as O Miami, Utah Arts Festival, and the APA Institute at NYU. Her play, The Real Sappho, was awarded the Kenneth Reinen Foundation New Works. And she has been awarded by YBCAOA, a room of her own foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. She has collaborated with the Deep Waters Dance Theater, Alayo Dance Theater, and a spoken word opera with Grammy Award-winning Kronos Quartet. An art fellow with Poetry in the Senses at UC Berkeley in 2023 and 2024, Suzara teaches at SF State University and is a writing coach through her business Wild Tongues. She received her MFA at Mills College. These 2 poets accomplish the work of resurrection, bringing back the dead, the forgotten. Perhaps you will agree with me that poetry can do this, perhaps you will not. But I am reminded here of a quote from Achille Mbembe: "Writing history merely involves manipulating archives." Quote, "Following tracks, putting back together scraps and debris, and reassembling remains is to be implicated in a ritual which results in the resuscitation of life and bringing back the dead, back to life by reintegrating them in the cycle of time in such a way that they find in a text, in an artifact, or in a monument, a place to inhabit, from where they may continue to express themselves." The pages of Reimer's poetry remain porous, open. They cascade us like the language poets continue to do. She gives the wish, Keşke, the Turkish word for wish, the shape of language cascades, as if we were approaching again and again Calypso's fulfillment of feminine desire, and perhaps something like the end of the cycles of violence within history, as her collection reckons with Turkey's failed military coup in 2016 and its production of over 9,000 refugees trying to cross the Aegean Sea for sanctuary. Reimer writes, "An emotion is Keşke, why she must imagine. Shadows, water, through it always. If this end of this cycle is clouded by shadow or endless sea, still, quote, she rituals unknown inventions," end quote. Suzara's poetry critiques the colonial gaze as the structure of representation that has been produced and maintained, especially by the United States, is maintained through the scientific classificatory scrutiny of a racialized biology. Her poetry calls our attention to the ways we are still haunted by this gaze, or even adopt this gaze ourselves. Souvenir's opening epigraph from Lacan reads, "I can feel myself under the gaze of someone whose eyes I do not see. The anthropologist's gaze, the colonial gaze, the surgeon's gaze, our gaze." Suzara's poetry flips this gaze back the other way, back toward history. Souvenir takes us through the herring exhibit of bodies stolen from the Philippines at the St. Louis World's Fair, but the stakes of revisiting this history are high. Quote, "I tiptoe with caution, as though I might let off a bullet with the shudder of my thought," end quote. I am very excited to hear these speakers' works and new works alike, and welcome Amy and Jennifer.
Oh, wow. That was so generous, Erika. Oof. Get this. Okay, so I'm used to walking around when I do these things, but I've promised for the purposes of the recording, hi everyone back at home, that I will stay put. So promised, I will stay put. We have some housekeeping to take care of before we get to the poetry, but just to, there we go. So some gratitude, right, in keeping with the theme. Lots of gratitude to Beth, who's been an incredible mentor to me now for, what did we say earlier? What has it been? 18 years, something like that. Thank you to Amy for joining me tonight in this conversation. Thank you to Erika. I mean, already I'm already crying. Where's this night gonna go? Thank you to Lori, thank you to Lily, and thank you to each of you, right? We all have competing demands on our time, especially in the Bay Area, and it is a sacrifice to come out. You know, some of you had to get childcare maybe to be here tonight. So I see that, I appreciate it, and I recognize it. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'd like to say a few things before we read some poems. First of all, Keşke, right? That's how you say that word that you've been perhaps looking at up there on the screen. That is a Turkish word, so you say it Keşke. And in Keşke, it's an expression of wish or longing. It can sometimes be translated like if only, or also sometimes I wish. It's definitely the sort of expression of like, oh, if only I could be there, or I wish. So why did I title a book of poetry with a Turkish word, and what does that mean for me and for the project that I'm doing? First of all, I'm not Turkish, okay? I don't have a biographical or genetic connection to Turkey, but I did write a book about Turkey. Why did I do that? I did that because I did spend about 5 years living and working in Turkey. And in the book, some of what I'm doing in that book is responding directly to my experiences of living and working in Turkey. And some of the book is a response to events, contemporary events that were happening as I was living in Turkey. But the book is not an attempt to speak for or about Turkish people. So I'm not trying to appropriate or speak for the Turkish people, but I am, in parts of the book, thinking about what it meant to be there and to live and work in Turkey during a time around, as Erika mentioned, the failed military coup of 2016. But the other part of the book, and the part that I hope we get to talk about tonight, is drawn on from my experiences in Turkey, but also some of my travels around part of the Mediterranean basin, which is, of course, these landscapes that are deeply implicated in a lot of the classical Western canon, which is a literary tradition that I am also deeply implicated in. And this is around the time that things like Madeline Miller's retelling of versions of like Homeric myth were really popular. So I was reading Circe, I was reading Song of Achilles, and I was also finding myself coming up against these geographies where a lot of these stories unfolded. And so I found myself rethinking these myths, thinking about what it meant to think about these myths from a feminist perspective. And on one particularly impactful trip to Malta, I was taken with a good friend of mine who happens to be in the audience tonight to this location, which is actually featured here in this photograph, which we were told was the cave of Calypso. And it was a very unimpressive crevasse in a cliffside. And so that sent me back to the poem, right, back to the Odyssey. And so I reread it, and I started thinking about what it would mean to think about Calypso from a more feminist perspective. And this is right before Wilson releases her sort of feminist translation of the Odyssey, which I read a few years later as I was revising the Keşke poems. A bunch of other stuff is going on, and we can talk about that later in the conversation. But just to say that the origin of the Keşke poems, which is a series of 25 interlinked poems, has a lot to do with thinking through ideas of myth, of goddesses, of what it means to exist in these mythic spaces, and drawing on my own personal experiences of revisiting a lot of this geography from these spaces of the Mediterranean. So with that in mind, I think we can look at some of the poems. But I will start with the two epigraphs from the collection, because I think they also speak to topics of our conversation tonight, poetry and the mythic imagination. One, of course, very famous from Jack Spicer: any fool can get into an ocean, but it takes a goddess to get out of one, famously referencing the Odyssey. And the other one, from the poet Charlie Ann, who's also in the audience with us tonight. Charlie Ann, thank you for providing this epigraph for my collection. The siren and the sailor have both been me. Let me just start a timer here so I don't take up too much of our time tonight. Again, it's going to be difficult for me to stay in one place as I read. Also, I just want to note that I don't often read the Keşke poems from this collection because they're difficult to read out loud, and you'll see if you take a look why they're difficult to read out loud. They're experimental, they're polyvocal, there's a lot of excerpts, they're intertextual and bringing in excerpts from different texts, there's different voices here, and so I thought by giving you guys some visuals, you could at least have some ideas of what they look like on the page and get a sense of the different voices that are coming in and out of these poems. So I'll do my best to try to represent for you a little bit of what's going on with the different voices that come in and out of these poems. Keşke 1. Start where she, prophecy, remains. Fragment, stone, pine, trust, coast, line, caves, calypso, behind the azure window, the lovely goddess, the wanderer, driven time and again off course, swept away by wind and wave, wide, wet, wine dark, sea. The bewitching sea nymph smiles at his words, 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 withholds, stroking his arm. Water, line, withdraw, advance, withdraw, where, woven, chiaroscuro, ocean tossed in her house, cliff's dark crevasse. This small space widens, hours to days, form emerges as tidal rocks emerge from goddess, captive, captured. Breeze blows to storm, beach wrecked, timber isle. Be not deceived if I have veiled my look. Still air spins epic from ruin. She scrawls walls, hunts history, sings. What a rascal you are, with a devious mind, to think of speaking to me. Now, cast net, cast spell, bind, all wishes to conceal. Cunning, she swears, Keşke, by this earth and the sky above. This means the world. Oh, goddess queen, this is no beginning. Keşke 3. She descends river valley, ancient Lycia, way of flowering, oleander, fig, bay, pine, wild grapevine, trails, maquis, mint, laurel, myrtle, Timber Mountain, Tahatlada, Throne of Gods. What were the right ways? What was the name that you gave her? Tumbled into wind, she dreams 100 years before Christ. The pirate chief, Zenicetes, his kingdom lost. So the pirate sets fire to his house. Fiery Mount Chimera, Yanartash. She imagines wife and daughters. Emerge from rock, burn, inside, a flame that does not die by day or night. Part lion, part goat, part snake, chimera, breath of female fire, enraged Antia, she, hybrid, dishonored. Witness these details. Mount Omurga, Jamoda Peak, winged Bellerophon, who, on all sides, arrowed clouds, broke the sacred bond between she bewilders, guest and host, Zeus, his raging realm of female death, she spits in the dirt, likes challenge, myths arterial routes, down the coast, Chirula, origin of, temple of Hephaestus. Barack, the TV actor, lights a cigarette, promises, Keşke, into risen night, she reconfigures, geography, monstrous goddess of attachment, combs snakes from her wet, cool hair, one solid braid, skin of sound, bruises to remember what might have been, care, what avoidance, plated into desires, not she, abandoned by Olympos, olives and dry oak, offer, aching, will, evidence. You read what she now reads. Keşke 4. She swims invisible worlds, matter, common tongue, length of bay, leaves fallen, dry pages turn, margins to letter. She reads absence, a space you haven't yet filled with breath, counts. 4, 1, before you tumbled me. 2, swallow's nest. 3, a document in madness. 4, you who long for things. Past, replica, pirate, ship. Wrecked ruins of naming conventions. She dreams that she speaks the lines of the sea, deciphers currents code, that the view is more splendid if you would come 4 days, 4, breath, space, we have made for more. Each century decoding begins again. She, stars, skin, seas, surface lit, back, wards, against, incessant, click, clack, water and air constellate her body, shell, wave, spray of foam, passage through time, gate, way, cast, away, word glance, away, word spell, away, out, nothing in half, an emotion is Keşke, why she must imagine shadows water through it all ways. Keşke 7. She breaks away from shore, channels, open sea, receding focal plane, sea surface briefly broken, gull's beak, wing, past days of fasting. She still hungers, empties the small islands, pieces of candy, see nothing left to break, not line, not frame. Wishes are, would you offer sugar, cypress crusted, buyuk ada, evergreen. Remember the old pine tree, tumbled ruins, stone house. She imagines Greek again, Calypso, the lustrous nymph, abandoned. She doesn't eat sweets anyway, does not like to wait. Bek, oh, bekliyordu. For every dive, resurface, she spins sea foam into gold threads, time without break. Keşke, breath of Elma, nargile, into red achote seeds of Pacific salt spray. She exhales into silence, fills feast of breaking fast. Keşke 12. She splits stone from wish, the Roman chapel, ruins belonging, another one, condition secures absence, holds this promise to no one, to go, to come, to stay, to leave, myth or memory. I might claim to be nothing less than she who beckons, though you might still wish, ben gidiyorum. No hero holds her back words from you gods who cannot bear to cover longing, to let a goddess sleep with a man, even if it is fate, without threads, concealment, and still she that conceals, skin woven, names, rift, collapse light, aperture, what we leave out. She, divine goddess, binds rock to Keşke, summons gold, Pacific, backlit, caving. Keşke 15. And this is a special edition because of Taylor Swift. And because of Taylor Swift, but also because of Taylor Swift, we're talking about Ophelia, and Ophelia makes it into these poems because I'm not just thinking about Calypso, but I'm thinking about a lot of other women from the literary tradition who get short shrift. And also, I was also in Denmark around this time. And so this is my Ophelia poem. And I did it before Taylor. And so you'll hear Hamlet and you'll hear Ophelia. She rivers the continent, nymphs, the many banks and slopes, collect thy orisons, words so sweet of breath, rosemary, fennel, columbine, rue, pressed dry between pages. She burns remembrances. No, she thinks everything. Long longed, Danube, Mosel, Rhine, take these again. Across the Baltic, where garlands wear out, northern seas or wilted prayers, Words become rivers, mad river song. She translates one final grief. She will not cure, will not silence form into wide mouth where river is sea broken, Keşke. Waves, words, denuded, she tosses away blossoms, sea-scored rings of river echo in your halls, her breath. Be all your sins remembered. If you remember in the play, it's be all my sins remembered is what Hamlet says about Ophelia. Ooh, that's exciting. But in my version, it's Ophelia to him, right? Saying no. All right, we're getting to the end here. I think this might be my favorite Keşke poem. This is Keşke 20. She could sing the sea for all time, muse many moments, change light, chant blue, green. She bows his boat, masthead, belongs antiquity to siren song, open waves, swollen mouth, swallow, sailor, hero, whole. She heroes her own tale, spins, lyric, epic, sea, spray to sail, Keşke, winds, trades, hard rock, fortune, still fate, kader, beni buraya kader getirdi, where she guides ship between shape, coastal olive trees, shift green, gray, silver, her. Hands steer toward against shore break, Keşke from words, worlds, span knots, thread days, turn years, forms she. Keşke 22. She kindles some new intrigue, September's sands strewn inside the hollow cave, Calypso, weeps 4 days. On the 5th, she, as for you who longed for Keşke, swallows rise, return in this version she does not give. I know my body, not gracious this, is better than hers. She, messy, refuses, raft to iron, light, lengthened water. So 2 words become this mouth. Full water, fall, river bend, any place, water breaks rock, cataracts into caves, sudden skin between teeth. After all, words measure words, remove Keşke, capital cities, switch power roles, reverse time lines or composition. She, queen of goddesses, no witness, went home to faith. You, set frame, picture it. On the 5th, Calypso, she let him go, wearing red, hot circles, soundless scores, cave mouth, bruised half moons, embrace, empty, Keşke. Keşke 23. She slips undercover, deathless, ageless goddess, Keşke. After affect, slant of eye, swears, breath glutted. I will not plot more. Mortal diversion, distraction. Here, a new valley, deep ruin again. Rose, dawn-broken silhouette. Finique marina, ships, sails distant. Now she routes coastal, caravan of gifts, wine, water, robes, and so much else too. Cliff, wish, face, demre, silence, ending. Yes, I'm happy. Yes, I'm sure. She lies between what is near, far away, Ankara, or this dream valediction. I am always here waiting. Bana bak, bana bakma. But she looks dissolving Keşke, this sea, salt wind, pillared wish. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I was just so caught up in it that I was like, I'm just in the audience. I forgot. What am I doing here? Thank you so much. I love your gratitudes. That was such a beautiful way to start and acknowledge. I do want to have a gratitude to everyone as well that you named, and I will add to my parents who are here from the Philippines, Ellen and Emil. So, and I see a student, maybe there's someone else I'm not noticing, and some people that I really would like, I'm happy to see. Educators and parents of people. Oh, thank you to Jennifer's parents. Wow. So this is so great to see some folks. Okay, I just got distracted seeing certain people. I'm like, oh, wow, some good friends. Okay, I could name all the people, but I can't do that with my time. I was planning to only read, is this the right height that we should be at? Let's do it like this. I was going to only read the poems from my new manuscript that I can't announce yet because it hasn't been officially announced, so I'll just say a new manuscript. But since this is available and because it was discussed, I'm going to add a couple poems from this, and that way I'll just break it in pieces. I will try to keep track of time here. Can someone give me like a 5-minute for the, yeah? Okay, thank you, because I don't know. I don't know how to do the timer on my watch. I'll be sitting here trying to figure it out. So this is Souvenir, and I know that Erika was talking about it goes into the World's Fair of 1904. That was after the 1898 purchase of the Philippines or colonization of the Philippines, and with the Treaty of Paris and that whole history that was very important. And this is Filipino-American History Month, by the way, October. So consider this your education, one of your educations for the month, but please go and read Filipino history, look up the Filipino-American National Historical Society, look up what I just mentioned, the histories that I'm gonna just touch upon, because it's a very important moment it was considered the height of US imperialism, and a lot of things emerged from that, as well as how people were depicted and seen. So I do wanna honor this person, Tugmena, who was one of the subjects whose photos I found in the archives at from the World's Fair. And the 1904 World's Fair, quick thing, is when Filipinos were put on human display. And there were other peoples as well, but there were many people taken from tribal groups in the Philippines to demonstrate the savage people who were being civilized. And so this woman, I felt, speaking of like using the mythic imagination, I felt she really looked at me when I picked the photo. I literally felt held this photo, and because she was actually looking calmly at the camera. And a lot of the other images, they looked kind of like shell-shocked. There was a lot of eugenics-related classification of people, so a lot of them did not look as pleasant. And so I wanted her to be on my cover, and that's Tugmena. So I'll just read just 2 poems from this one, and then I'll move on to Birth Language, which is a lot more directly about mythology and has a lot of relation to the poems you shared, actually. And I did bring this as one of my props. And I will be bringing a couple up in a second. So there will be some moving around. Sorry for camera. This is called Objects and Artifacts. I enter the air-conditioned room, a maze of glass cases. Here, a lace-up dress stretched over a headless bust. White taffeta layers bloom and cascade like a wedding cake. Between the statue and myself, I see my ruddy face reflected in the glass. And which is the ghost? This colonial woman, headless, eyeless, in her eyelet dress, or me gazing back? In the adjacent case, gray tarnished krises, a bolo, the sharp tips poke my eyes. A headdress with red and black feathers fans the city out of me. A rice god, elbows on knees, watches so far from his domain. Philippine playing cards sleep in a stack. The top one stares back. My face is framed by the oval shape surrounding its subject. A sightless boy, holes for eyes, the rice picker's conical hat, skin like coffee. He rides an elegant water buffalo. I imagine myself there. Was this a real boy modeling for the artist? Flies and mosquitoes hovering, the calabao's tail swatting, back bristling, sweat behind the boy's ear, a desire to be witnessed. And the painter, sent to collect the very best, a mess of putrid sweat gathering under his thick suit, skin crawling in the heat. Or was this boy a figment, just one like many others? If I were there, 1904, a souvenir, which suit would I become? Which number? And then I will move to Philippine souvenir card number 1, which the boy on the card, so if you imagine a playing card and that image speaking back or imagining speaking back. Nine of hearts. Upon a calabao I sit, tilling the perpetual rice paddy of your imagination. Legs astride, barefooted, my brim painted into position. My brim hides my face. You, viewer, would think I have no features, my skin only black like the calabao. We stare eyelessly. Who are you to shuffle me into order, bid me away in games, assign me to a number, a suit? My heart thrums beneath this starched yellow shirt. I cannot breathe for its strict collar. Every day I wake to till the same stereotype of a field. It's barren now, no rice left to fill your plates, only this vision of a man. You think you've succeeded in capturing me, the way I brace my calabao with ring, with whip. So that's my little sampling from Souvenir. I do have to say the press that it came, this is 2014, so it is becoming an archive itself, but it also might go out of print soon. So just to kind of hint, we have copies here. I bought a lot so that I could bring some, and they're on the unfortunate I won't even advertise website that you know where to get things, but they are right now available. So I want to move on to, so I purposely brought this boat, so hold on. All right. So here are from new poems. I knew that was going to happen. Somehow I sometimes manage to get it to stay, but we shall see. All right, it's staying right now. Is it staying? Okay. So this is from Birth Language, and this begins, so I don't have the projection, so use your imagination, of a babaylan, a prayer from a shaman that is like in the indigenous belief systems of the Philippines. The babaylan, it was a feminine embodied person. Often they could be transgender or gender fluid, but embodied in a feminine way. That was like the shaman medicine person who communicated with the spirit world and also could heal the sick. So they could do both. And now it is believed there are people who still embody that tradition in other ways. So I'm just getting it into it. This begins and closes with The Babaylan's Prayer. Manuscripts with clips instead of nice book. Not yet. Okay. Sound the flute. Let our chests tremble, our heads fall back. Let these mga tula be flute call. Summon the anitos. Let the babaylan dance. Let us all become drunken with rice wine, feast on fish and manga, even if we should appear mad or that we be dismantled. In this way, let there be healing. Let us enter ngayon sa ritual. And just one of the things the way this manuscript is organized is the first section is called Invocations. And there's this text. So I used archival text looking at early encounters with the Philippines from Spain and from other European explorers and conquerors. But the tradition, there's a calling of a flute, so that's referenced there. So this next poem is called How to Become a Spirit in a Body in a Home. There, the body soaks up the humidity, comes back to life, hair and skin richer. Skin achieves the appropriate hue. All the dried, cracked things flood with moisture. You start to dream lucidly. You start to dream about ancestors. You learn your languages. Here, you feel a missing for something you lost a long time ago. You're not sure you can locate what it is. It is a vague yet pressing feeling, persistent, a thirst. You can never drink enough water. There is a dryness at the back of the throat, a mysterious cough. You feel you are in the wrong atmosphere, the wrong humidity level. Something is gravely wrong. You feel wrong in your skin. You feel your weight is wrong. You eat foods to make you feel your own gravity. You're wrong in your own tongue. You open your mouth and a foreign sound comes out. This clunky and oppressive form of communication floods your throat, your mouth cavity like cement. It is a language that is not kind to you. You try another language shared by other people who were colonized by Spain. Something feels in place. You try to study the languages of your parents, ask them to speak in their tongues, Tagalog, Pangasinense, Bicolano. Even then it comes out broken, mixed with English, but you want it undiluted, to undilute what was diluted long ago. Only this is not possible. Your inheritance is dilution. It is up to you to go back to the sources, to learn the names of the plants and yourself, to find the ways to name things, even if everyone thinks you are mad, to learn what you were named before, and then, in the end, your only task is, what will you rename yourself? This is called We Come Swimming. And I will begin with a quote from Antonio de Morga, History of the Philippine Islands, 1609. So the quotes, when I do these little prefaces, are from a lot of them are from the 1500s, 1600s. From a port of this island, about 70 canoes came out, each containing 3 men or thereabout, while some came swimming and others on logs. They had fine teeth, eyes, mouth, hands, and feet, and beautiful long flowing hair. Indeed, for a barbarous people, naked and of so little reason, one could not restrain himself at the sight of them from thanking God for having created them. We come in boats, or we come swimming. We come in boats, or we come swimming. We come in boats, or we come swimming. Bangka, take me home. We were born with fins, we come swimming. We were born with gills, we come swimming. Ipinanganak namin sa ilalim ng dagat. Bangka, take me home. Nacimos con aletas, nadando. Nacimos con branquias, nadando. Ipinanganak namin sa ilalim ng dagat. Bangka, take me home. Venimos en botes, o nadando, venimos en barcos, o nadando, en nuestros cuerpos, nadando, Bangka, take me home. Venimos en botes y viviendo, venimos en barcos y viviendo, en nuestros cuerpos viviendo. Banca, balicantayo, balicantayo al mar profundo, regresemos al mar sa ilalim ng dagat. Banca, take me home. This is a replica that would remind you what the banca is. And if you understood any of those languages, you got more out of it, Tagalog and Spanish mixed together. I'm gonna be like Bad Bunny and be like, you gotta learn it, because you gotta learn all of it in 4 months. Okay. I know my time went faster than I expected, so hold on. Okay, another one that's like that, I think, with water, which I know we can connect on this. This is called Amphibious, and similarly starts with another Antonio de Morga. This time it's quoting Dutch traders. Some of these, by the way, in the footnotes, you would learn that some of these were observations in other island nations on the same journey. Not necessarily always Filipinos, but you would see so much similarity. These people, so this is called amphibious. These people, both men and women, seem amphibious, and to be able to live on water as well as on the land, so well do they swim and dive. 5 pieces of iron were thrown into the sea to them for the pleasure of seeing them exercise themselves. From the History of the Philippine Islands, 1600. To be amphibious is to breathe underwater. Gills and fins illuminated in a flash of sun. To be sirenos es amar el mar, es tener cuerpos de agua. Disfrutar how the sea dances along our spines, how it fills our hair, makes us weightless. We do not care if we are seen, taken as entertainment, desnudos, observados en un acto sagrado. Our brown bodies split the water, no para conquista, kundi para sa unión. Our bangka are extensions of our katawan ng tubig. Do you know which hands carved this wood? Mula saang mga puno, whose spirits guide us to the other side? Hindi namin kailangan ng mga mapa. Hindi namin kailangan ng mga kumpas. Feel the immense dagat move beneath us. Can you feel it through the thick hulls of your conquering vessels? We do not disrupt the harmony of things. Can you plunge your hand into the sea and bring up a fish? Can you split one into 2,000 pieces so that every mouth is filled? Can you perform such the miracles? Oops, geez. Can you perform such the miracles that you describe in your holy book? I know the next words. Watched by mga anito. Todos los seres vivos nos protegen. Bawat plankton, bawat maliit na hipon, bawat nababuhay na bagay. Ser amphibious. Upang maging kasuwatu sa dagat is to breathe underwater. That's not what And I know, okay, so I have no idea what happened with the time. Okay, perfect. We the Beasts. And then maybe I'll be able to do this one and maybe fit a tiny one after. Close it with the babaylan. We the Beasts. So this is in line of this. This one feels really satisfying to read, so I have to do this one. Their laws and civilization were so poorly observed that they seemed deadened when the Spaniards landed there. In fact, the inhabitants there lived like beasts. That's also from Antonio de Morga, The History of the Philippine Islands, with some, one of the footnotes is also with some echo of Rudyard Kipling's The White Man's Burden, that poem, if you're familiar. Okay, once again, before I started, I just realized I messed up my page. This is the thing about the page. Like, well, how did I get it this messy? Jeez. Was I flipping all over the place? Okay. Aha. We, the beasts of these far-flung islands, live without laws. We, the beasts of these far-flung islands, live without rules. We, the beasts of these far-flung islands, live without shoes. We, the beasts of these far-flung islands, live without you. We, the beasts of these far-flung islands, live without capitalism. We, the beasts of these far-flung islands, live with the land. We of these far-flung islands have wild curly hair. We of these far-flung islands have natural tans. We swim like fish. We can move our hips. We have many gods, do not need a church, honor our ancestors, are at peace with the dead. We know how to love, are not afraid to touch, know how to play drums, know how to make rum. Do you think you are better than we as you land upon our far-flung islands, admiring our bodies, our perfect mouths that you capture like stars, attempting to control our light? Are your civilized any less beastly than we? You, the beasts of those far-flung mainlands, have destroyed the earth. You, the beasts of those far-flung mainlands, have disturbed the dead. You, the beasts of those far-flung mainlands, do not know how to swim. You, the beasts of those far-flung mainlands, do not know how to dance. You, the beasts, turn red in the sun. You, the beasts, envy our golden arms. You stand stiff in the wind. You try to copy our rhythms. The beasts try to steal our songs. The beasts try to steal our names. The beasts try to school our children. The beasts build churches upon graves. The beasts have turned paradise into trash. The beasts depend upon us. Okay, I think I'm on my closure, right? Is that about it? Thank you. Yeah, I'm always thinking, I'm hoping, I'm knowing you're thinking about other things happening in the world as we talk about the Philippines, but also life. And I'm gonna close, I guess. I mean, oh gosh, okay. How am I gonna do it? Okay, do I have like 1 minute or 2 minutes? 2, okay. I'll close the, this is the shortest thing ever. Okay, so I have to do this because it's for my son who's not here. Just another taste of like the mythology. This is like a half-a-minute poem. And it's about birth. I mean, this book also has birth in it as well, this manuscript. First ultrasound of a trickster. So if you're familiar with the Santo Niño or the Santo Nilio, which is the Filipino version of the Santo Niño, this is mentioned. What did you sound like that first time? A flutter, the wings of a furious butterfly, thrum of a colibri. Twice my heart's speed yours, a life force undeniable, a wild new fish already swimming upstream, all swashbuckle and verve, all grit and ache, already my Santo Nilio, playing in my waters, opening the way. And then to close, the Babaylan will close it with the Babaylan's prayer point 2. I have to fix this because it keeps doing this. Babaylan's prayer part 2. Sound the flute. Let us become one with the past. Let us speak into the future. Let us speak in present tense, but let the words be like migrants, songs rising above all the noise. Let the noise then subside like waves, breaking. Let us break, open. Let these words be a door. Hayaan ang aklat na ito maging pangarap mo. And that poem actually is one of the ones I would have liked to project, but it actually has echoes of other poems inside of it, but I would need several voices or projection. So that is the closure of my set. Thank you so much. With my bone. Ended up with more than one book. Is one of these? No. It's not like 2 books.
I took these 2 books. I took these back.
Display.
The giveaway.
Oh yeah, I took one accidentally.
Oh, all the books are just flying around. We're just going around.
Is this on? Okay. Wow. Well, I hope you all enjoyed their readings. Absolutely. I just feel like taking a deep breath after both of their readings. Both of your readings did feel in their own way like incantations. Like songs, incantations, but I know that both of you have this relationship with water that, again, Amy touched on at the end of your reading. So I did want to invite you to let's start there, to talk about water. I have a few other questions, but I thought it would be good to start with either what about water and the sea for your poetry allowed you to retell or explore history, explore desire, explore origin, explore the future. What about the water for you really shaped your writing?
Can I just say I thought it was so interesting that we were both in that anthology? Yeah. So about water. That I just wanted to say that when I found out about this event, I immediately Googled Amy so I could read everything of hers that I could find online before I could get the book. And on your website, I read your CV or whatever, all your list of publications, and that's how I discovered that we were both published in this somewhat obscure, I would say, anthology by Quale Press on the subject of water, where you had to submit a poem on the theme of water. So great question. But go ahead and answer it first, Amy.
Then you throw it back to me. No.
Yeah.
It's hard. I guess, I think you can see from, if we talk about my newer poems, actually, when I think about dryness and moisture, I think a lot. My first book, you'll see poems where I'm in the desert, because my personal life story, we lived in the desert and we lived in some very dry locations, and that to me felt like the most not furthest away from what the Philippines and the origins could be, that and also I felt more miserable in those places. And so there's a lot of writing that's about what living in those environments. And so my newer manuscript, it takes a lot, maybe that's why a lot of it is in the water and envisions our people as amphibious and as sirenos. There's also mermaids and sirenos, and there's mention of other types of entities that in Philippine indigenous belief systems, there's creatures everywhere and everything. And if you're in a moist tropical place in the Philippines or anywhere that you may have origins, you feel the life, it's biting your skin. I get attacked by mosquitoes, so it's you're the life is everywhere and it's on me, it's in me. But it's also very it's to me, I write the best when I'm in those types of environments, when I'm by the water and I'm in the water. And I felt when these early encounters kept describing these beastly but yet beautiful. So it's the interesting beastly yet beautiful creatures that they wanted to watch them swim, right? They were such great swimmers and they were such great boat people, and our own ancestors are fisher people and lived by the water. So it's interesting, I felt what kind of skills that they have of embodying and living in the water at all times, and kind of pictured them like breathing underwater and all of that. So, and then to me, it also envisioning, there's one that I wrote about being like a sireno that's lost in the desert, that's so thirsty. And the one I read you, I was like, I'm thirsty right now. I was like, why is my lips so dry? It was like, just so you can see how thirsty I am. But I feel like it's like a thirst, and that like distancing from origin can feel like a thirst. And so like being inside the water felt very necessary for me.
Ooh, that's tough to follow. So water has followed me in my poetry. My first book was about rain. It's called the Rainy Season Diaries. I don't really like the rain, and I say that, and people say, but you wrote a whole book about the rain, and I'm like, I know, but I don't like it. And now I live in the Pacific Northwest, and I don't like the rain. I don't. But I do love water, and I'm from California, and I split my time growing up in California, in Southern California, and here. These are both watery spaces. And then I moved to the Mediterranean, and before I lived in Turkey, I had lived on the island of Cyprus for a year. So these are intensely both very watery, but also very dry places, the Mediterranean. It's dry and rocky, and then intensely watery. But I think for the Keşke book, a couple of things very much influenced the wateriness of that manuscript. And one was the fact that most of it was written during the summer of 2016, directly after the failed coup attempt, some of which happened in Ankara, the capital city of Turkey, where I was living at the time. And as a result of the disruption happening in Ankara, I sort of left the city as soon as I could. And I ended up in a very remote part of southwestern Turkey, on the coast, in a sort of bohemian village, in a tree houses on the coast of southwestern Turkey, and ended up staying there for almost 2 months. And about as far away as I could get from the terrorist attacks and all the things that were happening in the big metropolitan centers, in an area where people didn't speak very much English or none at all. And so every day I would just go down to the beach and I would swim. And I would swim for hours at a time during the day. And I would swim to this count of sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, take a breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, take a breath. So I was literally in the sea. And as I was swimming to this 1, 2, 3, 4 breath, I was thinking about poetry. I was reading another long story, but I was reading this huge doorstep anthology of postmodern American poetry. That's a whole story. We'll talk about it over a bottle of wine. So I'd been reading poetry, I was thinking about poetry, and what happened was I was composing lines of poetry in my head as I was swimming. And so a lot of the Keşke poems ended up getting composed in a kind of watery way, and a lot of the sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 rhythms showed up in these poems as a result of swimming in the water. And then I was in these spaces around the Mediterranean basin, which are these watery spaces. And like I mentioned, I was rereading mainly the Odyssey, and I was thinking about Calypso, and I was thinking about Odysseus and sailors. And then I ended up spending a lot of time on a boat with a sailor. That's another story. And so all of this stuff influenced the sort of nautical wateriness of the poems. On top of that, there's some threads in there, swallows, the Pacific Ocean. There are these sort of traces of other watery spaces that have been hugely impactful in my own biography and my own sort of like literary heritage. Also, this cover is, I just think I should mention that the cover image is an Anatolian goddess. Her name is Şamaran. And this particular depiction of her is by a woman, a female artist in Istanbul, and I found her art on the internet, and we corresponded, and she graciously allowed me to use her depiction of the Şamaran for the cover of the book. But she's, sort of an ancient Anatolian siren figure. She's Şamaran. I think she's very beautiful.
Thank you for sharing all those stories. I love hearing that. Love the swimming as forming the poem almost with breath, and love the idea of thirsting as a way of, like, a symbol for missing and not being close to where you feel at home and where you're meant to be. I do want to, I was thinking, calling back to the event title, Myth, and how, for you, Jennifer, a lot of the retellings have to do with kind of the problematic representation of women in the literary tradition. So that compelling this rewriting of the past. And for you, Aimee, myth as maybe offering, and for both of you, offering kind of tools for telling and this connection to storytelling, right, in the oral tradition, and the role of orator and listener, a different kind of transmission of knowledge, or just another way of, incantation and such. But also myth as a way of contending with this idea of origin. For you both, what about myth, how's some of your poetry in the realm of myth, or why engage with myth, the idea of myth, its tools, its invitation to retell or reinstill some agency, if that's even what is happening, which is a complicated question. Anyway, all to say, invite you to kind of speak on that.
Well, let me try to grab onto that last part. I think you were saying about agency. I would definitely say in Souvenir, I wasn't exactly utilizing myths in the traditional way, but I would say in myth, like imagination. And I guess there is a mythology when you tell stories and imagine perspectives. And so there is a way of giving agency or imagining agency into people who didn't have agency, who were dispossessed and who were, under the gaze. And so allowing them to look back, kind of like in that book cover, is what I think imagination can do, and time travel in a way through history, through artifacts. And so I think for my newer work, where I went further back and tried to imagine these earliest encounters, that there really is not much to find. So like when I was doing my research, every time I do the research, of course, I can't really find the voices of the people I want to engage with. I find the voices of the people who discovered them or wrote about them or studied their bodies or studied them in cages or whatever, and study their bones. And so it's this act of being like the one who was under the gaze had a voice and a life, and that is what poetry, and writing and storytelling allows us to do. And then also with my new work, my parents are here, a lot of these little myths and beliefs of these creatures I write about, like Capre and Duende and Diwata, and I got little glimpses of it, but I realized that I want to pass on to my son, there's other ways that people have lived and live that has more magic in it, and also there's so many stories that were lost, and so recovering and learning things that I actually didn't even necessarily know growing up, but knew a little bit, like doing a little digging. And I think that's what the Sireno came to life for me. My dad's here, so I'm like even made my grandfather into a Sireno, like ways that they thrive and had you could retell a story that might have been tragic or might have been a sad story, or you can retell and actually they live on in a different way through the mythology. I guess that's my long answer to that.
I'll try to, that's a big question, and I think there's a lot to say about it, so I'll try to keep this I'll try to distill this into, I think, and especially in the Western tradition, which is the tradition that I'm most deeply implicated in, I think that mythology is a space where characters who express longing or who wish for things are often punished. And I think especially for women and female characters who long or wish for things get punished for that. And I wanted to ask the question or explore, well, what if, Keşke, you didn't? What if instead of getting punished for longing or for wishing, we could transform that through epic poetry into a space for female agency? What if longing and wishing for something became an active space for female agency? Not necessarily that you get what you wish for, not necessarily that you stop longing, but that, you're not this sad, desperate figure necessarily for that act of longing and wishing. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. Calypso in the Odyssey, right? So you have Circe, and she's like the badass witch, right? She's the one who turns sailors into pigs and is kind of like cool. And Calypso's like the slutty one, right? Really, that's definitely how she's depicted. Certainly in like the classic Robert Fagel's translation of the poem, she's sort of the pretty slutty one who chases after Odysseus, and Odysseus kind of sort of rejects her, but he stays with her for 7 years, right? So I don't know that we're actually supposed to believe that that's a very chaste 7 years, right? What happens on that island in that cave for 7 years? But, she's always like, I want you, I want you, I want you. And he's like, oh, but Penelope, but Penelope. But he stays for 7 years, but then ultimately goes home. But she's cast as this kind of slutty, desperate goddess figure chasing after this mortal man. And I don't think that the poem offers much compassion for her, but she doesn't have the badassery cool of Circe. Ophelia wants Hamlet, and she's punished for that longing. She wishes for a life with him. And the text gives her the option of suicide. And I'm thinking like, well, what if there was these other options? Not only for these classical women in the literary tradition, but, perhaps other women in the year 2016 who were feeling wronged by the men in their life. Okay, and we'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for sharing. I don't know how are we doing on time? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Are we doing audience too, or me? Okay. If any audience wants to, I can compound one question and invite you to answer any of them or none of them. And then maybe an audience could ask maybe one. Yeah, and you can choose which question to answer. Choose your own adventure. Okay. So, I wish there was more time for you to talk about your poetic practice and all of that.
Any time really to talk about the work. I don't know if you agree, Amy, but it feels like such a privilege to have any space like this and to have people listen to us. I mean, my God.
No, I agree. It's great.
So some of the questions that I have for you are, for you, what is the relationship between past and present? If those terms are useful for you. How did you decide how time moved in your collections? And what was the relationship you saw between multiple moments of history that you chose to include? The other question is, Amy, you set up a ritual of sorts in how to resurrect a dying heart, which I love in Souvenir. Untraumatize, unfall into a coma, return the breath to lungs, return the heart to its innocent state, reflesh the bones. And in Jennifer, in one of your poems, you write, yes, things that happened long ago still matter, Boxes in a garage in California, pieces of languages you knew, now words, a certain mouth rhythm. How have you used poetry to imagine life? Can poetry give life or stage its revival? And anyone
Great
in
questions.
the audience,
Those are just questions and beautiful poems right there.
perhaps you can ask the poet yourselves afterward.
I really wanted to. I like both of those. Thank you. I think I want to answer the first one because I always talk about. I wanted to address language as a method to time travel, and that's something I engaged in, and I've been increasingly engaging in when I gained fluency in Spanish and still remained elementary in Tagalog, unfortunately. But that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write in a way that, I don't know, I felt like its own language emerged, and I had to ask for help with pronunciation, with, especially with the Tagalog. As I was doing like the research, I was coming across things in Spanish and Tagalog and other languages, and I thought I had to let go of, I'm not perfect in any of the languages, but also when you look at what happened in those, under colonialism, is people's languages were mixed, and I would say in the Philippines, thankfully, the over 187 languages continue to exist and didn't get lost, but Spanish entered it, and there was a time when Spanish was the primary language. That was the language of the elites and the colonizers and the priests and the friars. But we maintained our many languages because there's 7,000 islands, or not all of them are inhabited, but many, many islands and many tribes. So I felt like, at least as a starting point, I mean, maybe for the next one I can engage with some of the other particular languages. I feel like the past, when I started writing in other languages, I started dreaming in other languages and hearing other languages, and Spanish has become a part of how I think and dream, and I felt like it allowed me to go back in time, and because it kind of didn't make sense before when I was reading some of, like, the Antonio de Morga is written originally in Spanish, so I started like, I can read the Spanish version now, and I can so I think that's a good push to learn languages. And also it actually goes together with giving life, because to me it helped refresh like my ability to engage with the archives.
Oh, that's a hard question for the last one. Yeah, so this is UC Berkeley, so can I just briefly say, can we just briefly talk about Bakhtin and like chronotopes? And, I think a lot about the chronotope and the Bakhtinian sense of like, I love the idea of the chronotope. And he uses it as like this word for the way that time and place get enmeshed. A classic one might be something like the Twin Towers and 9/11. And I think of my poetry, especially in Keşke, as being like, in that sense, working a lot with the chronotope. Time and place are very enmeshed in the book, very interwoven, and also collapsing across time and space. I'm super interested in space-time and how it's operating. And so I think that there's a lot of enmeshed time travel, but it's like chronotopic time travel, and where time, place, and space are all enmeshed and collapsing in on itself. I read one poem that is about the place where I stayed, which is called Olympos, and I read this poem, which is about one of the historical events that happens there. When it's invaded by this pirate chief who sets fire to his whole town there because he wanted to prevent it from getting invaded, actually by a young Caesar who eventually will come. But like, he preferred to just set fire to his whole town as opposed to like getting it like invaded, including his family. He just lets them burn. So that's a poem that I was thinking about as I was living in this present day settlement there. So history is constantly impinging on the present in this collection as I am thinking about contemporary Turkey, as I am thinking about the Syrian migrants who are literally crossing into the country in 2016, as I am thinking about what it means to live in an increasing state of exception as Erdogan releases decree after decree expanding his authoritarian powers in the country. At the same time, I'm thinking about revising the Western tradition through epic poetry. And there is a connection there, and that matters in terms of the enmeshing of history and present in time and space. And to find out more about how that works out, you have to read the book.
Pitch for the book.
All right, thank you so much to these two poets. Big round of applause.
And what a perfect setup for our book giveaway. We do have books for sale, and maybe you could stay here and we could bring your books up. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay.
There's a QR code for mine, and that's on the wall, I think, so maybe that could be taken down to bring over.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so they'll be up here with their books to sign, and you can all check your chairs. Underneath the chairs, if there is a Post-it note, winner! Right here. Okay, there should be one more. Is there one more? Right here, all right. Here's the other winner. Congratulations. Thank you again. I wish we could just all stay here all night. It's totally mesmerizing and so uplifting. Thank you so much, all three of you. One more round of applause for Jennifer, Aimee, and